Hello, my name is Steven, this is Business Progression, and today we are talking about the quick ratio, also known as the acid test ratio. Legal disclaimer time, this video is for educational purposes, it is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, what is the quick ratio? The quick ratio is a number that shows how much cash a company has or can access quickly compared against the company's payments due within a year. Let's take a look at the formula. The most basic quick ratio formula is current assets minus inventory with the resulting number divided by current liabilities. For those of you familiar with financial ratios, this one might look suspiciously similar to the current ratio. And it is. Due to its similarity to the quick ratio, let's do a fast recap of the current ratio. The current ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities. A current asset is an asset that will be used, sold, or basically is available for use within a year. A current liability is the exact opposite of a current asset. It is something we owe and must pay within a year. The current ratio's purpose is to test whether a company has enough money on hand to pay its short-term obligations. At this point, you might be wondering what the real difference is between the quick ratio and the current ratio. They are both measures to test whether the company can meet its short-term obligations. The difference lies in the subtraction of inventory in the quick ratio. Inventory is risky and can't always be sold quickly for cash in order to meet bills that need to be paid. It can be lost, stolen, broken, become obsolete, or as mentioned, just take a really long time to sell. As such, we take it out of the equation. So, in other words, the quick ratio is a more critical look at the company's current assets. It is sort of like taking a class from an easy and a difficult professor. The easy professor's class will be, well, easy. You will probably learn some, but not as much as you could have. The difficult professor's class will probably be a bit painful, but you will be pushed to your limits. If you can pass that class, you will feel more confident you can succeed in the industry. The quick ratio acts in a very similar way to the difficult professor's class. Now let's take a deeper look at the elements that make up the quick ratio. First, current assets without inventory. These are the items that theoretically either are cash or can be converted to cash quickly. Well, most of them can be converted to cash. I'll talk about this more in a moment. But these current assets could be a cash equivalent, such as money invested in a money market fund, accounts receivable, which is simply money owed to us by our customers, as well as prepaid expenses, marketable securities like stock, etc. These are the current assets we include. Okay, before we continue, a quick interlude. We are using the most basic form of the quick ratio equation in this video. There are different ways of calculating the quick ratio based on what you want and who you are doing it for. Some people may calculate it as cash or cash equivalents plus marketable securities plus accounts receivable over current liabilities. Another option is current assets minus inventory and prepaid expenses. The idea in these equations is that you are taking out some current assets, besides inventory, that can't quite be turned into cash. For instance, a prepaid expense is something you've already paid for, but you can't use that to pay a different bill. That said, back to our explanation with the basic equation. You have your current assets minus inventory divided by your current liabilities. Current liabilities can be made up of several categories such as accounts payable, accrued expenses, debt, deferred revenue, etc. Long story short, it is money that the company must pay within a year. Let's take a look at what this could potentially look like before we do a quantitative problem. Imagine you're on a frozen pizza making company. We'll ignore for a moment here that freezer pizza crust is the worst. You have a great current ratio of 2.0. The sunny sky is overhead, you have no fears of going out of business. Every day you run your factory at maximum capacity to be as efficient as possible. Then one day your finance guy comes up to you, his face pale. He says, "Sir Bossman, we can't pay our bills. We have no money to pay our utilities or suppliers." You scoff. How could that be possible? With your current ratio of 2, you should have double the amount needed to pay your liabilities for the entire year. Right? Wrong. While you were running your factory at maximum capacity, you were burning through cash, turning it all into inventory. Now your deep freezer is chock full of pizzas ready to sell to grocery stores. Unfortunately, you are making them faster than the stores are purchasing them. You have tons of current assets, but no cash. Tons of inventory waiting to be sold, but the key is, it still does need to be sold in order to get cash. Fortunately, your finance guy was able to get a short-term loan to cover current expenses, and you as the boss learned an important lesson on why cash is king, and by extension, why the quick ratio matters. Let's take a quick run through of an equation. Say your company has $200,000 in current assets, of which $150,000 are inventory. Your company also has $100,000 in current liabilities. So, you subtract $200,000 by $150,000. You are left with $50,000. You divide this by $100,000 and get a quick ratio of 0.5. What does this number mean? It means that for every dollar of current liabilities due within a year, you have 50 cents in assets that are cash or can be turned into cash relatively quickly. How do you know if this is good? Well, it obviously depends on the business and the industry. Companies that have stable cash flows and are less risky can operate with less of a buffer than those with erratic cash flows and more risk. It is best to truly understand a company to know whether the number is in a danger zone or not. That said, obviously extremely low numbers are worrisome, and extremely high numbers may mean the company is sitting on lots of potentially unproductive cash. It is also important to recognize that this is just a single ratio and it can have its failings. For instance, this ratio is based off of the balance sheet, which is just a picture in time. On an exact date, the quick ratio is a certain number. The number can and will change the very next day, but you won't know what the new number is until the next report is published. Also worth noting is that accounts receivable is included in this ratio. We are assuming that all of this money can and will be repaid relatively quickly. In real life, there are customers that pay late and even default on their payments. This can lead to the current assets being higher in the ratio than it might actually be in reality. In other words, the quick ratio may be somewhat artificially higher than it should be. All this said, when looking at the quick ratios of a public company, it is best practice to compare it against similar companies and competitors in the same industry. This helps you see how the company you are analyzing stacks up against the others. See this example, for instance, of 3 hypothetical companies' quick ratios graphed over 6 years. Each number by itself may not mean much, but in comparing these, you can see that the blue company is holding relatively more cash or easily convertible current assets than the orange company. You would also see that the green company appears to be taking a dive towards insolvency. Of course, you always want to do further research, but these are some ideas of what you could discover by comparing the quick ratios. We've done it. We made it through learning about the quick ratio. Let's go over one last time what the quick ratio is. The quick ratio is a number that shows how much cash a company has or can access quickly compared against the company's payments due within a year. Thanks for watching.